Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about Sandman and his buff and what I think about him now. And he also asked what White Mummy thinks of him now, because he has a rank 5 6-star ascended Sandman, and we actually kind of align in our thought process. Now here's the deal with Sandy. His buff inevitably did make him better regardless what some of the forum posts say. They did reduce his top damage slightly. Well, for some margin, that really would matter only in exceedingly long fights. And Sandman isn't necessarily a champion that you will use against massive health pools anyways, in my opinion. And if you do, you're going to be using Sandman because he fits all the criteria. You're not going to use Sandman because he's going to finish the fight in 5 minutes and 10 seconds opposed to 5 minutes and 45 seconds. If it's going to be a long fight with Sandman, it's going to be a long fight with Sandman. His damage ramp up still goes up quite nicely. It's not as high as it used to be, but you can access it quicker. So you can debate, whichever way you want it. As far as I'm concerned, the fact that Sandman's top damage slightly lower now, I'm not that bothered by it, especially because now it scales with modified attack, which means only thing you have to do on for like Everest content is put on a boost, and then his damage output will be higher yet again, because all of those things like recoil masteries, boosts, and nodes now actually affect the Sandman's burst damage opposed to before the buff. So that is something important to acknowledge. However, obviously, this buff, compared to what we saw before, is still a major letdown. This buff effectively just did one thing, and it enabled his level 2 rotation being stable. Level 1 rotation still doesn't work if you want to go for burst damage. It's just not enough debuffs in enough time. It doesn't function the way it should. You can use your level 1 rotation to do the heal reversal. Level 2 rotation, you can go for damage now, and you can also go for level 3 rotation. It also will help you with the damage. But that does unlock the de-accelerate as, a consistent debuff that you can access whilst doing top damage. And damage-wise, I did a bunch of testing pre-buff, and I didn't necessarily play it perfect because I was a bit preoccupied with a few things, but pre-buff, he basically finished the fights in approximately the same time. It's 2:15. It kind of depended how much I messed up or how smoothly the AI played. But pre-buff, rank 4 Sandy, we had 2:15 fights against Winter Soldier, 2:02. This one was very nice. And, you're going to go basically 220 to 155 with Sandman pre-buff in all of those fights. And these rotations are post-buff now. If you do not know what changed for Sandman, then basically all of his heavy charges now scale with a number 8 instead of 10. So basically you get the same benefit as you did before by throwing 10 heavy attacks instead of 8, which make him slightly quicker on the ramp up side. But they initially had it tuned at 5, which apparently was too much. And then the rest of it is just basically the fact that his damage scales up to 20 debuffs, not up to 99, which does make him much more viable in different rotations, primarily of level 2. Again, level 1 rotation, you can't really maintain a good amount of buffs if you also want to do the full set of burst damage, especially not initially. Eventually, you can switch to your level 1s if you want to, once you already have built up a decent chunk of de-accelerates. But if you just try to do level 1 with heal reverse plus damage, it's just not a good rotation because your debuffs aren't going to be, sticking for long enough. And all of these post-fight matches, the times are similar. So I started thinking about, how I feel about this. Well, number one, I feel that this entire buff is kind of a wasted opportunity. Now we got 212. I'm going to go up against CMM. That's going to be under 2 minutes, I think. Then I'm going to try, a few different variations of at which points I activate level 2 and stuff like that. So this one's 207. Then I did the Jugs fight, which is fine. Then I did the Winter Soldier again, just to make sure that I get a very good feel about his damage output post-buff. I did the level 3 rotation here with Sandy, and level 3 rotation post-buff kind of seems almost unnecessary. It helps you slightly, but again, there's no major difference at all whatsoever. And then obviously we need to take a look at how Sandman does against Deadpool, where we're going to be using purely his heal reversals. And this is the thing that didn't change, but I was still interested in seeing how fast or slow Sandman is going to be able to deal with, a fight where he can utilize his heal reversal well. And then we're going to go up against Venom the Duck, where we're basically going to be going for the level 2 damage rotation. And here the entire name of the game is, I don't care about anything else aside from spamming as many level 2s as I can, because, the more petrifies we have, the faster we can reverse it. If I start spamming my heavy attacks and building up my heavy proficiency charges, my petrifies will just not stick around for nowhere near long enough. So the entire point is that I just want to build up power as fast as possible in order to spam my level 1s to get as many petrifies. As soon as I enter, here I made the couple mistakes. I thought I can punish this hero attack, I swear. This was the only mistake in this fight, but it actually didn't really cost me anything, because as a result of this, I ended up having slightly more power, and the last level 1 timed out perfectly to leak out Deadpool there. So, anyways, point being is, this was like 1 minute and 3, could have been possibly, a minute or 55 seconds. Now against Venom the Duck, I'm going to be dropping a couple of heavy attacks as I build to my level 2. And then effectively I will, be throwing my level 2. When I have already like 3 or 4 of these heavy proficiency charges. You don't really have to do this, to be honest, and I'm not entirely sure that, I'm, any faster than I was before. So here I want to bait out the level 1, which is fine. And now I'm going to go for, this one was where I messed up a bit. But we're still going to get a decent time here. This isn't a perfect run by any means, but it worked out fine here. So we got him nearly down to 22% initially. And the cool thing about Sandman's level 2 rotation is you can be unstable pretty much all the time. Because in order to maintain instability, you basically need to throw 2 combos and, a level 2. So there are some things that I do like. I like the feel of the champion. I'm just still incredibly worried. So that was 1 minute and 5 seconds. Now, for the sake of comparison, well, we're going to go in again. I kind of played this one a bit better. So instead of 1 minute and something, here I played it more clean. And I got 55 seconds on the Deadpool. And I did this fight, redid it just to be kind of like objective and fair. I did all of these fights a whole bunch of times, to be honest. And here, Sandy goes through, Venom the Duck, and this one is 104. So it's not a major difference. Then I thought I'm going to compare Sandman to a 6-star rank 4 Sig 200, my Sandman Sig 200 as well, Void, because I kind of realized that Void and Sandman had exactly the same science champion category. Obviously, each of them have some pros over than another and some cons, but they kind of fulfill a similar role where you have basically 2 realistic win conditions. With Void, obviously, in heal reversal fights, you can finish entire fights by completely ignoring any hit damage and just relying on your heal reversal, which is kind of his Sandy, so I'm going to compare exactly that aspect of it. And then you can also go for stacking as many debuffs on and basically rely on dot damage that you get from the debuffs themselves and Fear of the Void increase in attack to finish out fights relying on your damage over time effect. And both of them are quite chunky science characters. Obviously, Sandman has more immunities, but Void is defensively much, much more viable. Sandman has de-accelerate, which is better. Void has, other things going on for him too. And I think it will not be a controversial thing to say that Void, even though he's recently regaining some popularity, he's definitely not anymore like the science powerhouse. He's one of those champions that still functions very well from many, 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 years ago. But let's see, how he does damage-wise in these exact same fights. And that was a perfect comparison also that I managed to make because they're virtually identical. Sandman now, after his buff, in terms of how he is able to close out the fights, is virtually identical to Void in terms of speed. Be that heal reversal for most part, or fight where there is some heal reversal involved, or be that, just going into a neutral matchup without any kind of like significant advantages for each of their kits, just kind of like what is their actual damage output. And it genuinely turned out that, yeah, they're pretty much the same. That's, in my opinion, kind of a problem, because, that's also, for most part, the one thing that's somewhat holding Void back. Void is, again, currently, obviously, this season, very popular because we're playing metas where debuffs are inevitable. And in general, though, we have moved away from Void in most of the game modes at large as community because we just kind of have faster options. At the same time, he's still viable. And that's why I kind of have a bittersweet feeling about Sandman. This buff to Sandman definitely brings him up in line where you kind of almost have decent enough damage output for him to be up there. But in reality, it just doesn't measure up to Titanius and Hulks and, Joe Fixits in terms of damage, or Mr. Negatives or Torches and whatnot. We do use these champions when, the stars align, when the nodes align. But let's say if there's a Battlegrounds meta where there are no nodes at all, then Void isn't going to make the team, just like Sandman is going to make the team. And they did such a phenomenal job with Sandman. Then again, I kind of have that bittersweet feeling. And yeah, speaking about Void Mummy as well, his comments were, it made him slightly better, but not a big deal at all. I liked him already before his buff, and this buff effectively changes nothing in the way he works. He's not the fastest, but he's reliable and fun to use with very great utility. And, this is the type of thing that I thought we need the balancing program to kind of move away from these type of champions. Not every champion can be like amazing, but in my opinion, point of balancing up a champion is to make them good, viable in metagame. And again, not every champion has to be CGR, but he was never gonna be that. And they left his buff as is with scaling of 5 heavy attacks. That could have and probably would have given him those extra 10-15 seconds in Alliance War and Battlegrounds fight matchups and stuff like that. Or maybe slightly increasing the level 1 duration so he can actually use his level 1 rotation combined. So we can use his level 1 rotation combined with his burst damage, which at the moment is an impossibility. If they could just slightly increase the petrify duration, and that would have made him viable as is, basically, with just slightly longer petrifies on his level 1. And then already he would have that much more value. This is genuinely one more of those buffs where I just need to ask myself, why do they bother? It's like, the people who liked Sandman before still likes Sandman. But it did not turn him from, a good character to great character. They turned him from good character to slightly better character, which is still pretty much exactly where he stood. And this genuinely seems like a waste of money and effort. Somebody's getting paid to analyze all of this stuff, and somebody's getting paid to code and, do all these changes. And, when those changes are this kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme of MCOC, I'm genuinely starting to wonder what's the point of this balance program. There have been like 2 champions where it has made like a massive difference, but those both champions were like severely undertuned, like Shuri, for instance, because they had to improve Shuri by a factor of 2, and that would have been obvious, to everybody. Aside from that, pretty much all of the tune-ups have been inconsequential for the most part. So, that is where I stand on Sandman's buff. He's a tiny bit better, but it basically doesn't change anything in terms of who is going to rank him, who is going to use him, whenever. Before the buff, he was still going to be used next season in Alliance Wars because of the best science champions being blacklisted and banned, like, Cassie's and Titania's and whatnot. So Sandman was always going to get used in this new Alliance War season, and that's, I believe, still going to happen. And I don't think there's going to be much change in lines for... Sorry, in polygons for him. So that's kind of my opinion. Sandman buff, I don't think it's a nerf at all. I do think he's slightly better. I do think opening his level 2 rotation, you know, at least makes him somewhat, you know, more reasonable as a champion. But ultimately, with these tune-ups, I'm generally starting to ask myself, what's the... Let me know what you guys think about Sandman buff situation, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. Bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about